Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Orange County School Board's Rule Development Workshop, scheduled for today, June 18th, 2024. The Rule Development Workshop has been scheduled for the purpose of discussing Board Policy JIC, Student Code of Conduct, 2024-25 Code of Conduct. During this Rule Development Workshop, the school board will only be hearing public comments on the proposed revisions to Policy JIC and the 2024-25 Code of Student Conduct. Because this is not a regularly scheduled school board meeting, there'll be no non-agenda public comment period in which the public would normally have an opportunity to address the board on other topics. Should you wish to address the board on another topic, please do so at the next regularly scheduled school board meeting. Board members are attending in person, and we have with us Member Gould, Vice Chair Gallo, myself, Member Felder, and Member Castor-Dental. I want to remind the public, board members will not be engaging in outside electronic or digital communication during the meeting so that we can focus our full attention on the business before us. And to my fellow board members, myself, and the district staff, when speaking, please speak directly into your microphone. Make sure it is turned on. We want to make sure our YouTube and Orange TV viewers can hear you clearly. We will now take a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And now for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Where's Amy?
All right, let me check again. Is there anyone from the public that signed up to speak? All right, thank you. Dr. Vasquez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This afternoon, we are going to be reviewing changes to the Code of Conduct. The team will review the timeline. As you may recall, we have been reviewing the Code of Conduct for quite a while. We've had individual board meetings. We have also had work sessions on these changes. And for the purpose of tonight, we will only be addressing the changes, and I believe that they are minor. We have Staff Attorney Kopesky that will be presenting alongside Demicki Joyner. And so I will now turn it over to Ms. Kopesky.
Thank you, Dr. Vasquez. Good evening, Chair Jacobs and board members. As Dr. Vasquez stated, tonight we are here for Policy JIC and the Code of Student Conduct. We're going to review the tentative schedule, summary of actions, proposed revisions, next steps, and then have questions and discussion. Our tentative schedule started back in February when we went to Cabinet on February 12th. We held a work session on February 20th to get board member input. We had a second Cabinet meeting on April 1st and a second work session on April 9th. The April 9th work session is where we presented majority of the changes to the upcoming Code of Student Conduct. We had a third Cabinet on May 20th and then another work session on May 21st where we also proposed additional changes since the last work session. Tonight we are at Rule Development Workshop, and board approval hopefully will be June 25th. The effective date though for JIC and the Code of Student Conduct will not go into effect until August 12th, 2024, which is the first day of the 2024-2025 school year. The proposed revisions to Policy JIC include a clarification on expected student conduct and the inclusion of statutory language regarding zero tolerance. The proposed 2024-2025 Code of Student Conduct, which is incorporated into Policy JIC, has substantive revisions based on board, staff, and community input. Additional proposed revisions include content, formatting, and terminology edits consistent with statutory and rule language. As Dr. Vasquez stated, we have very minimal changes. I do not have any changes to the policy since the last time I presented it, so if it's okay with the board, we're going to go directly to the handbook. Thank you. Let me just do this.
Are you at page 29?
26.
All right, if you turn to page 26, we've added contraband as a level 2, and this was added per the school board request to include a lower level offense for contraband, to include pepper spray that is less than 2 ounces or less. Also on page 29, we updated it to include the term repeated. For the first time, now would be a level 2Y contraband. So a level 3, the word repeated was added just in case they had pepper spray or another type of contraband again, and it would be a level 3 offense.
Thank you, Ms. Joyner. Those are the 2 revisions that we have since the last time that we presented. However, I do want to express the concern that staff does have for making contraband a level 2 for pepper spray. Our concern comes with the reduction in the level of offense may unintentionally increase the number of pepper spray that comes onto campus. And then pepper spray can either intentionally be sprayed or sometimes unintentionally be sprayed. It can also leak, which can cause injury. And what we've learned in the research that we've done is that spraying pepper spray, even a very small amount, can affect a ton of people in the vicinity, not just the person it's sprayed at. So it could affect an entire classroom, an entire school bus. And so our concern is that if we lower it to a level 2, which we did at the board's request, but our concern is that if we keep that as a level 2, it may unintentionally increase the number of pepper spray that does come on our campus.
Thank you. I appreciate that concern, but in the investigation, I think in most of them that I've seen, you could determine if it was intentional or not. Is there a way to write it that if it was an intentional use of inappropriate intentional use of pepper spray, somebody's being attacked and they're alone? I don't think that's a bad thing. But if they are in a crowd and it goes off, but if it was an intentional use, could it go up to a level 3?
So if it is used, it will actually be a level 4 because it most likely will result in injury, which then would be either a physical attack or a battery on the student. The concern that we have is if you have a lower level offense, so a level 2, I think the most severe punishment you could possibly get is pass. And so a student may not think twice about bringing pepper spray to school if they're only going to get pass. If they're going to get suspended or possibly up for expulsion, then they may think twice before they bring it.
So it's not usage, it's just having it on their person.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. If we were talking about the usage of it, that's where, I think that intent is important. A lot of our students have to walk to school, and unfortunately, they don't all live in areas that are maybe as safe as we would like them to be. And if it was my child, I'd risk even a level 4 over risking my child with the pepper spray. So I think that's a parental and child decision. And I am not as concerned if it's not used being found on them and making it such a high level of disciplinary action.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Member Gould. Was there a high instances of students being found with pepper spray on them this past school year?
Do you have those numbers? No, we didn't.
No.
No.
No?
We don't have those numbers, but we can get those for you.
Okay.
And just to note too, the pepper spray has historically always been a level 4 offense. So bringing it, we initially brought it down to a level 3 at the request of the board for this upcoming school year, and now we've brought it to a level 2. So we have decreased it substantially.
I think the intent of the board, or at least my intent when we were discussing it, was, as Member Gould mentioned, those students that come from areas that aren't safe and they walk in and their parents want them to have this on them. And then there's a random search and they didn't turn it over and they get caught with it and then it's a level 4. I don't agree that if it's just in their backpack and they're not using it, if it gets used intentionally, if they pull it out, then that's another story. It should be a level 3, level 4, but just having it on their body and they've done nothing with it. Nobody took it out of their backpack. They just have it in there for their own security reasons. Since we are unable to provide a safe place for them to put it, then I think it should be at level 2. I think the consequence should be passed. Now, it should be different if it's used. And I'm willing and I don't really believe that students are going to be scouring our code of conduct to determine that it went from a level 4 to a level 2. The only way that's really going to get out is if a student is caught with it and then they only get passed, and then that's when students will start talking about it. And I'm willing to revisit this mid-year or the end of the year if you see that there's an abundance of people who are bringing it to school and it's becoming an issue on our campus. I don't suspect that it will be. But I would be willing to look at it at that point. But as it stands, I'm fine with this language. Thank you.
Okay, Member Castrodell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur that the intent of this change was to prevent our students from being punished for their self-protection on the way to and from school. I don't think we need to change it from what we discussed here at the board. And I concur with the examples that Member Gallo shared and with what Member Gould's position as well. Thank you.
Just to be clear on, it is right now 3, correct?
Currently,
And this, go ahead.
I apologize. Currently in the current code, it's a level 4.
No, I'm sorry. The
And
draft that you
the
have
draft,
is level
it's a
3.
level 2 and then a level 3. So
Okay.
the first time offense is a level 2,
Oh, I see.
repeated is a level 3.
I had stepped away for a minute. And so Member Gould and Member Gallo would keep it at a level 2 unless it's removed from the backpack or used. And if it's used, it's automatically a level 4. I definitely, I don't think it should come out of the backpack. I mean, it shouldn't be shown, it's just, but, and so you're with them on the 2. And,
Right.
and I'm going in that direction, but I tell you, the look on our chief's face, I really want to hear from him, if you all don't mind. Was it obvious? Okay. Like they tell me all the time, don't play poker. But you know, you do the same thing as I do. Most of the time, if you can tell what I'm thinking, it's because I want you to know. So go ahead, what's your thought?
Thank you for recognizing me, Madam Chair. This is a compliment on my tool belt. It's what I do for a living, enforce the law, and occasionally requires the use of chemical spray. I'm probably the only one in this room that's had a direct exposure to chemical spray, or an indirect in the line of duty, working with other officers and just catching some of it when we're engaged in conflict. My concern here is, one, it can be used to not just spray someone, but spray an entire group of people. We've had that happen with our SROs who've had a large fight and they're trying to break it up. It's very effective in doing that. It's going to disperse the crowd, and we're probably going to be transporting them to the hospital because they panic. Some kids have a very severe reaction. If you have, say, lung issues, possibly some leftover results from COVID, maybe you have asthma, you might have an even more severe reaction. The other thing I'm concerned about, not just is if it's used in a conflict in one of our schools, it's also accidental discharge. It can be very disruptive. Most of the time, the people around it don't realize what it is, again, causing maybe a panic reaction. It could be on our school bus, it could be in a classroom. If I were to take the chemical spray that I'm currently carrying and just do one small dose here in this room, I'd clear this entire room. You would all be coughing, sneezing, carrying on. It would take a little while to get around, but it'd get around the entire room because it's got air circulating, and it's very, very effective. I like it as a police and law enforcement tool. I don't like the idea of it being carried in our schools. That's just my opinion. I'm your police chief, and that's where I stand on the issue.
Let me ask you this, because I have never used it. I never had a need to use it, fortunately. My husband and I both, when we take the dogs for a walk, whoever's taking the dog, the leash has attached to it the pepper spray, because we have a couple of dogs that have been problems. Just for my own benefit, I've always wondered if I used it, I'm sure the dog I'm using it for is going to suffer, but I've been trying to figure out, why am I not going to be like also almost debilitated from this? So what would be the experience?
You don't want to spray it upwind. It will affect you. It'll make you sneeze. It'll burn your eyes. It makes your nose run. Some people have a more severe reaction, and then others don't. I've experienced that as well. Some people can eat hot peppers and, just really it not have as much of an effect on. So it just depends on the individual, but overall, it's a great tool for law enforcement.
Okay. Dr. Vasquez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We really wanted to make the board aware. We did make the change to a level 2, but it's not staff's recommendation, nor is it the superintendent's recommendation to move it down to a level 2. And so we wanted you to be aware what the concerns were, speaking with our district police, speaking with law enforcement, some administrators. They are not in favor of having it as a level 2. Yes, they can do an investigation, but more than likely, they're going to say, I have it on it for protection, as do many of the students that we find a weapon on them, such as a knife or a gun. I have it because I was afraid. I was trying to protect myself. And so this really was information on our part, because it's not staff's recommendation, but we understand the board wants it to be a level 2.
Okay, so and one of the things we did talk about, and this is where I come down on this issue. If a parent is seriously concerned, and I can appreciate why some would be, I would like for us to find a way where that pepper spray has to go to the front office, and it has to be approved before they are bringing it, that the parent has explained why this is critical. It's a safety measure. It has to be turned in, and then it has to be checked out. I don't know that we can do that. I think when we discussed it last time, it's problematic, but I would feel a lot better with that approach than just reducing it to a level 2. Dr. Vasquez, about the feasibility of that?
So yes, we discussed that that's not a feasible option that's putting responsibility on the school. And additionally, we're asking them to do something that they believe is a violation, because it is a weapon. It is considered a weapon. And so that's why the level 2 is a way to be able to meet the board's request for a child that has it on them for protection, and it's found primarily during a search, because that's when this would happen. The child would receive a level 2 consequence for the first time it occurs. If it's found on them again, then that would escalate to a level 3, and then if it happens again, it would be a level 4, and they would be going to an alternative school.
All right, Vice Chair Gallo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I understand that we consider it a weapon, and I hear what Chief Holmes is saying, and I do take his concerns to heart. But according to statute, according to Florida law, if it's under 2 ounces, it's not considered a weapon. It's not considered a weapon by the Office of Safe Schools. It's not considered a weapon by the state of Florida. So it's then really within our decision on how we want to categorize the pepper spray. I don't think it's a huge issue. I think there's probably a small number of students, probably mostly girls, that carry it in their backpack for protection. And again, the intent of this, and I do understand the concerns. And again, if they pop up, I'm more than willing mid-year to revisit this. But a child who has no record, has never done anything wrong, that is a great student but is afraid for their life, if they get caught with less than 2 ounces of pepper spray on them, which is allowed by law, I don't think they should be suspended. I just don't. And that's my opinion, but I'm at the will of the board in this decision. Thank you.
Thank you for that information, because I was thinking, well, it is a weapon. I was not, huh? Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that, only because the reason for having it is to discharge it in defense, but I just assumed it was categorized as a weapon. Oh boy. And I also appreciate the concern that, because I would like the kids to be able to have it to and from school. And if we ramp it up, we're basically just saying you get a hall pass the first time, but you still really can't have it because the consequences forbid that. Member Gould.
So, I am sure before we started screening, these kids had the pepper spray on them. And we're finding it now because we're intensifying screening to prevent other things. And I in this case, I kind of agree with the law. I think having something that allows you to run versus allows you to engage, like a knife or a gun, are two different things. And I'm not saying all our kids are going to be angels and that we might not have an intentional or accidental discharge as we have in the past, but that's going to happen anyway, whether we have it as a level 2, 3, or 4, and then it's going to be a 4 period. I just think in this day and age, we need to smartly empower students, and I don't know the right answer on this, on the checking, not checking it in, because I think that would be an administrative nightmare, but I would feel terrible. I feel bad. I've had it happen at a couple of my high schools where the pepper spray's been, discharged. Dr. Phillips was one of them when it was mine. And, kids did go to the hospital, but they recovered. If a young person is walking home and something were to happen, and it's because we took it away, that it even prevented them from having a chance of escape, that's a whole other level of feeling bad. So I also appreciate Chief Holmes' perspective on this, and, I think, except for the child who might want to use it maliciously, and that's not going to matter what we have in policy. If they're going to use it maliciously, they're going to use it maliciously. They don't want to be exposed to it either. So, I would hope they understood what they're carrying and how it's going to make them not feel good. It might give them a chance to run, but they're not going to feel great if they get any whiff of that. So I'm still about it being a level 2, but as it progresses, if we keep finding it, that becomes an issue for me.
I'm going to ask you to clarify when you say as it progresses. You mean with an individual student or?
Correct. So if I come to school one day and it's found, and then the next day I get or the next week I get a level 3, and then the next week I still have it on me because I'm that scared that I'll take the consequence, and now I'm going to have a level 4 and go 180 days or half that to an alternative school because I felt I needed to protect myself. I don't think that's meeting the child where they are.
Okay, no, I just wasn't, you used the word progressing, but I wasn't sure where you were on the issue. So thank you, and I wanted clarification. Member Felder?
Thank you. I think I have some concerns. I was at Edgewater some years ago when a melee broke out. It was a riot. And the only way we were able to, get the students where they needed to be, the SRO had to dislodge the pepper spray. There were 5 or 6 kids that had to be taken to the hospital, but the fight was broken up. At Evans, I was at the 9th grade center. Fight broke out, and an officer had a taser, but there was also pepper spray, and I watched them tase this child 3 times. On the 3rd time, she finally dropped down, because when people are so angry, I don't know what happens to the adrenaline, they just don't move. My concern is that I had a student at Evans. She had brass knuckles or whatever, and I had other students who had pepper spray, and they would tell me that they needed it for protection. So I do understand, because some students, they have to go through a gauntlet of miscreants trying to get home, and they have to protect themselves. Not just girls, their guys also have to protect themselves. But my concern is that if we keep it at a level 2, a student who may have gotten in trouble for some other things, they get caught with it, and is the punishment going to be the same, depending upon the administration, how they handle it? Because I do understand it is a weapon. I have pepper spray, and I use it as a weapon to protect me. However, some students may use it maliciously. And so if it's a level 2 and they're not supposed to, whatever the punishment is, and then the parent will say, well, it's a level 2. And this person has done it over and over and over again. Now, I don't know how we're going to deal with this, because I guess I'm just at a crossroad, because I believe that young people need protection, because we can't always protect them. When the bell rings and they're off campus, that's it. But at the same time, you will have students who will, at a fire drill, when everybody's going out, they'll pull that pepper spray out and spray it. And we have kids who are deep like that. So I guess my concern is, I don't want it at a level 2, because it leaves too much. I think somebody's going to do something, and we're going to have some problems with the releasing of that spray. However, I think there needs to be some leeway with our young people who have the pepper spray for protection, because they need it. They have band practice, they have cheerleader practice, they have football practice, they have soccer practice. They have a lot that's going on. And I see students in my community that go to Carver, and they walk, it's night during the fall of the year. It's night. 6 o'clock is night, and they're walking home. So I don't know, board, how we're going to deal with this, but I certainly understand Chief Holmes is concerned. I also understand Member Gallo and Member Gould, because of the protection aspect of it. But I do know somebody's not going to follow this rule correctly. And some student is going to be mistreated because of it. And they're going to come back on the fact that this is what our rule says. So I don't know how we're going to work this out, board, but we need to be able to do something with it. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. So, having given it some thought, if, to Member Felder's point, if a student uses it, discharges it, then absolutely, that's a level 4 or more. I don't know what more there is, but that's very serious, and that is not up for discussion, I don't think, on this board at all, in terms of whether we would change that. Some of the things we sometimes worry about, are more kids going to start bringing it to school? If they're bringing it for malintent, they're not going to be impacted by consequences, most likely anyway. If they're bringing it for self-defense, I still have that nagging concern. And so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, how realistic is that? And then I remember back in 2006 when one of our students was stabbed at our bus stop and killed, died a couple of hours later. That was 2006. That was a long time ago. But Madeline Soto went missing on her way to school and was killed. Maybe if she'd had pepper spray, the outcome would have been different. I don't remember the name of the young man, but he was one of our students. I believe he was on his way to school, but it might have been on his way home. He was also killed. Shot, was it? Yeah, he was killed. And there's one more. There's at least one more that's just rattling around in my brain. And I'm only talking about students that have been killed. We don't have a count on the number of students that have been injured. So I agree that I think we should keep it at a level 2 if the only way we find it is through a routine check. The student never exposes it, the student never uses it. But I would add to that if it's being, I'm thinking if it's being used for self-defense, the parent ought to know it and have authorized it. And so perhaps that's a component of this, that the parent has to submit in advance to the school that they have authorized their child to bring it for this purpose. Now, the only downside to that is we've advertised you can do this, where some of the conversation has been how are kids even going to know, because nobody's going to read the student code of conduct. I think you mentioned that, and I was thinking the same thing. So while on one hand that makes sense to me, on the other hand, I'm not sure if that's just kind of an invitation that we...
Because the way the code of conduct is written. We're telling the people that they have it on them, so then they would get passed according to code of conduct as soon as the parent signs it.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Dr. Vasquez, help me out, please. Save me from myself here.
That's all right. So I think I may have a compromise that and again, this really was informational. We put it in the code as a level 2. I think what we can do, and I think Board Member Gallo was the first to express this, we implement for the upcoming school year. We monitor, and at the semester break, we take a look at the data. Additionally, we can survey all of the neighboring districts. I don't believe there's any other district that is allowing it other than a level 4, but it's not the first time OCPS has been out there doing something as being first. And so I think we were able to move forward with it. We do have the data. I'll have DeShonda Braun-Cannon send it to you. It's small. It's just over 100 that have been found this past school year. And I see Chief looking at me, but this is a compromise. And we also will monitor it. So if at the end of the first 9 weeks, we see there's 50 of them that have been found, we may be able to then bring it back sooner to the board. This way, we are allowing for those students that are carrying it, and it's simply found as part of a search, not that they are using it. And we'll come back with data both on the number that we have and any other districts that are also making it something other than a level 4.
Dr. Vasquez, could I ask you just a follow-up question on that? At the county, we had this service called MuniCode, which I think is similar to BoardDocs. And we had the ability to, like, if this were a subject I wanted to research and see if any of the cities or counties were doing something, I'd put in pepper spray, and it would show me everybody who has an ordinance on pepper spray. Do we have that ability with BoardDocs? Yes? Okay. Well, maybe that would be a search. I'm sorry, Mr. Palmerini?
So you have the ability to go search. This would be in the other school districts' policies or their
Right.
student code of conduct. You can go to their websites and search it. A lot of the districts use a policy service called Neola, which they pretty much standardize their policies for all the districts that use it. So we could do a search of the Neola policies. We could do a search of other district policies to see, or another district code of conducts.
Yeah, I was
codes of
trying
conduct.
to avoid somebody manually having to pull up one after the other. That's where I thought if we could use BoardDocs for any district that uses BoardDocs, the same as like MuniCode, that'd be a much more efficient way to see.
As a user of MuniCode, it is nice to do that, but I don't know that BoardDocs ties in that way. Well, it does.
I was doing the Baker Act. I just typed in Baker Act, and Nancy should into it, and every search from every policy on that, from all districts that use BoardDocs.
Nancy's really good on BoardDocs.
Sarah? See Nancy?
Yeah, maybe you could do that. I was just going to say Ms. Joyner did already pull some data from other school districts, so we do actually have that information if you'd like us to share it.
All right, thank you.
Seminole, they review it. There's somehow, I guess, like in my position, they look at it and determine if it meets the criteria of a weapon. If they determine it meets the criteria of a weapon, then that student is expelled from school.
That's weird.
In Miami-Dade, over 2 ounces is considered a weapon, and there's a recommendation for an expulsion. Under 2 ounces, it's at the principal's discretion. In Broward County, over 2 ounces, the kids are assigned to what we consider positive pathways. Under 2 ounces, you may get probation, or you also could be assigned to a alternative school for less than a year. Palm Beach, Duval, we didn't get an answer from them, but we reached out to them, so we're waiting to hear back.
Okay, thank you. The first one that you mentioned, based on that language, concerned me a little bit because it sounded very subjective. If somebody reviews it and determines it's a weapon.
If I may,
It's like-
Seminole has a different format for dealing with discipline. They actually have board members that preside over each of the what we consider to be level 4 hearings, and so that aligns with that process, that they have individuals review and make decisions. It's not.
Okay, thank you. All right, Vice Chair Gallo, you reckon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it sounds like that the other districts are really kind of conforming with the law, because the law says anything over 2 ounces is considered a weapon. That's in statute. Under 2 ounces is really at the discretion of the school district, and all of the ones that you mentioned are handling it differently. So it's not like there's not a discipline attached if they get caught with it. There is. It's just not a severe discipline. If someone uses it, it will be a severe discipline. It will be a level 4 if it's used with malicious intent. And if it was 100 people, those 100 people were just the ones that we we caught it on them when we did a screening, or were any of those, did they actually use it maliciously? Or was it just, hey, we did a random search and they were found with it, those 100 students? Okay.
Dr. Brown Cannon sent that data to you, and it is broken up by possession only, found in random screenings, sprayed, used, or dispensed, and then found with other contraband, weapon, or substance, for a total of 103.
So for the ones that were actually used or sprayed, what was the number on that?
Spray, used, or dispensed this year was actually a decline from last year, only 3. 18 were found in random screenings or searches, and 7 were found as part of contraband.
Okay, so we really only had 3 that had malicious intent.
It appears.
I'm fine
yes.
with the level 2, thank you.
All right, Member Castellanos.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I have, I'm going to go in a different direction after listening to the conversation. I see the need for some of our students who are coming to school via dangerous routes, by themselves or with whoever they're with, maybe a brother or sister, and they have this pepper spray for self-defense. And if it is not defined as a weapon, why are we giving kids a consequence anyway if they are keeping it in their backpacks? And we only know it when we do a random search. If we know that if they say that they have it for their own self-protection, I don't think we should punish them. I don't think they should get a level 2. If they do use it in a malicious way, or if they create a commotion and they use it during school, and they're not under a threat, they're not in any danger, then that intent is what is punished, that action. But simply having it on them when we know that it is used for their self-protection on the way to school, and we're not providing a place for them to put it when they get here, but we know that it keeps them safe and they're mandated by law to be at school, I think that we're setting them up if we recognize the dangerous path to school, and we're not helping them when they're here, but we're holding them accountable for that. So I wouldn't mind considering no level 2 for just those 3 people who we found during a random search. But for those who are using it during school, they can be held to account.
Okay. That was the last person to speak on this. So at this point, if we make a change, we've advertised this, right? Oh, okay. So if we make a change at this point, do we have time to get this back to the board? Huh? We've advertised this. So the question is, this is not our final hearing. This is our rule development workshop. Can we change this now and bring it back for a final vote?
So under the statute, any change you make after an advertisement has to be in response to any comments you have received from the public, to which you have not received any. Yeah, I did the research on it.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Can we have the superintendent speak to that, please?
Okay.
Dr. Vasquez?
Yes, Madam Chair. So in preparation for the work session today and for the rule development, I inquired of our general counsel during cabinet about this process. based on what happened last year. And the feedback that was received at Cabinet by General Counsel was that the conversation that the board members are having can constitute public comment because the statute doesn't define public comment.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, John just, John just told us, John, does the board's conversation constitute public comment?
You are, General Counsel's given her opinion. I've always looked at public comment in the sense of it's the public giving you comments, not the board's discussion. I think those are two separate and distinct things, but she is the General Counsel. She states the official position of the department, so I will not in any way go against that.
Let me opine on this, although it's not the position that, it's not what I like, but it's what I believe. So when I always go back to why, when there's confusion about something, why do we have what we have? And we're required to advertise and stick with what we advertised because the public has the opportunity to look at what we've advertised and say, you know, I'm okay with that, or I'm not okay with that, and I'm going to go down there and talk to those folks. So if the public stays home because they're good with what we have, and then we come in and we change it, then they didn't have an opportunity to know about those changes. And by the time we come back for the next hearing, we're locked into what we already advertised the first time. So from the standpoint of do we count as the public, I don't think the intent of the rule was for us to be able to advertise something and then change it at our discretion. I think it was so that we could change it based on new information that came from the public. So I think the safe thing to do is to re-advertise it with this change and to come back with another rule development workshop and start this process. I think that is the safer way to go, but I wanted, and not to say that y'all are going to agree with me, but I do want to know from the superintendent if we have a deadline that we need to comply with, and what is that deadline?
Our goal was to have this in place before the start of the school year, and so that with the timeline that you have expressed, it's going to be very, very tight. We'd have to go back and look at it. But I want to go back and clarify. So you're now wanting not to have any consequence if a student has contraband on them? Because you're right, it has to be over 2 ounces to be a weapon, but it's still considered contraband.
So I'm still queued up, so I'll comment on my position. I'm not in agreement with Member Castor-Dental. I respect her opinion on this and her position, but I think it should still be a level 2. What I don't agree with at this point is ramping it up, especially successively. If the board were going in the direction of it starts as a 2 and the second time it's a 3, I could probably go with that. But the idea that the third time it's a 4, my conscience doesn't sit well with that, because I do believe that we have some children. My own daughter was almost abducted, and with 2 of her friends. And if she hadn't had the presence of mind to take a really bold public position, she probably wouldn't be with us anymore, because he turned out to be a registered pedophile. And as I think through that scenario, I think if she had had pepper spray on her, even if she hadn't had the presence of mind when she did figure out it might have been the difference between me having a daughter and not having a daughter, and having just god-awful, horrible memories. So, like, life is personal. The decisions that we make up here, so many of mine are colored by my own experiences. That situation in 2006, it just was so devastating to me that that happened at one of our school bus stops. So for that reason, I want to have a way that students can, if they need to, bring it, as long as they don't use it, they don't show it to anybody, and not have such a severe consequence that they have to choose between the risk of being thrown out of school and the risk of being killed to or from school. So, but I would not go with no consequence, because I still think that that kids need to think twice, and there needs to be a really compelling cause for them to bring it to school, which is why I could be fine with the 2 and the 3. I just would stop at 3. That's one person. Member Gould.
2 thoughts. First, I'll follow up on that, and then I have a question about the discrepancy of public comment. After hearing some of the comparative, I like the under 2 ounces principal discretion, because I think the principals are in the best position to know what intent might be and what that child's circumstances are. And so I think we should put the trust local there, personally. This is directed to our Deputy General Counsel. So when we've had zoning meetings and we've actually changed the map at the table, sometimes with public comment, sometimes not. I'm trying to think of one where we didn't have public comment, but I think there was one where there was some question about, anyway, whatever it was. At what point do we as a board do our role in this, even if, and act on the public's behalf, even if they don't come to comment here? When this comes to the board meeting, could we actually change it there without public comment? Because what's the point of even voting on it then? Why do you need us at all? Please don't share that with the legislature, because they have a list.
But I so badly want to answer these questions. Go ahead.
So, is it on? Yes, it is. Rezoning changes at the table to answer that may have happened without public comment, that would really make me uncomfortable. Because when you go through a rulemaking process, there's you have the work session where the policy making and the board discussion usually occurs, right? And you guys get it set to a point where it is something that you are now ready to present to the public as a final product. And now, when you come to a rule development workshop, you're there to hear the public comment on what is essentially your final product. And then the same thing occurs at the final adoption hearing that you all will have on that. That's the time for the public to comment on what you have gone through a process. Because what some of the cases say is, what they don't want is for you all to advertise an innocuous policy and then all of a sudden show up at a rule development workshop or at a final hearing and just wholesale change the thing to where it's unrecognizable as to what's advertised. That's the policy reason as to why they've done that. And so I have a decided lack of comfort without having any public comment up here for you all changing it at a rule development workshop, which is where the public is supposed to come. Now, of course, if this went through tonight as it was advertised and we had somebody come from the public at the final adoption meeting and give a comment and spurred your conversation along that lines, Could you make the change at the table at that point? Yes.
So let me follow up on that train of thought. The zoning was probably not good because we get public comment all the way down the line. So at some point, somebody commented on a way they wanted a map or a street or a house. If we were at the board table with this, whenever that's going to be, next week, week after, whatever. If we were at the board table with this and nobody stepped up voluntarily, but we posed the question to anybody in the room, which would be out of our normal practice. That's our rules, though, right? It doesn't mean we can't do that. Correct?
It doesn't mean you can't do that. I always get worried about when you do something outside of your normal rules, that somebody else will come up afterwards in a situation where you don't want to do that and say, hey, you deviated from your rules this one time. Why aren't you deviating now?
Right. And we've certainly been caught with that in the past. So I get that. That's sound advice. Okay, so if this moves forward unless we re-advertise, do we have to do the whole code, or didn't we carve out last year a segment that we brought back and then finalized?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what you could do, if this were to go forward as is, as advertised today, and then you went through and adopted it finally at the next board meeting, you could then start the rulemaking process just for these two provisions at issue, advertise a change there, and go through the whole process again, and then make the change, and that would become official once you've gone through that rulemaking.
Unless somebody comes to the board meeting and talks about it, and then we could change it that night.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What if we received emails on it? Would that be good enough for public comment?
Yeah, it would. What I would suggest is if you received emails on it, those emails should comply with the deadline for receipt of public comment before a board meeting. So what is it, 4 o'clock the day before? Or whatever the deadline is. If you received it by then we would say we received public comment on the issue regarding the student code of conduct, and it said this, and then we could announce that at the table, and then you guys could then consider that public comment, debate it, and if you decide to change the language, you could do it that way.
Thank you, John. And I'm not comfortable with not re-advertising it because there seems to be some confusion in what the law says. And so maybe we can figure that out before our next rule development, the position that we're going to take as a district. And this is, I understand how you're interpreting it, and I'm fine with that. It just, we didn't, 6 months ago, we would have said even if someone commented that we wouldn't, until you researched it and found that, in fact, if someone commented, we could make changes at the board table. We weren't even operating under that policy. So I'm a little frustrated that we still are having a conversation that we had 6 months ago that we should not have had to have 6 months ago. So at any rate, I do have a question. Contraband, who's defining it as contraband? Is it defined as contraband in statute? Is it defined as contraband by OCPS? Like, who defined less than 2 ounces as contraband?
We put it under contraband, so it's an OCPS decision.
So it's an OCPS policy. Mm-hmm. So it's within the authority of the board to take it out of contraband?
Technically, yes.
Okay. I kind of side with Member Gould on principal discretion. I know that that's not something that will go over very well with OCPS because of the need for consistency, and we've had issues in the past where things were handled. You'd have one principal that was a little bit more hard than other principals, and so there wasn't consistency. I've been saying for the past couple of months that I don't think consistency should be the enemy of common sense. I just haven't figured out a way to balance that to where we could be fair to our students and as consistent as possible, but this world doesn't operate in black and white and never has. There's always going to be varying shades of gray. Our kids don't fit in a one-size box. They just don't. Each have different circumstances. Each have different home lives, some better than others. Each are taking a different path to school every day, some way more dangerous than the others. And so they just don't fit in that nice, neat box. And sometimes when we strive to be consistent, because that's what's fair and that's right and that's what's just, kids get hurt by that also in the process. So, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Member Castrodell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to let you know I understand that this is a new wrinkle in our policy, but I have to think that we have to consider the safety of our students on their way to school and on their way home. I've had fourth graders who have been raped. I've had a family member abducted and raped. These things happen, and they're not just in neighborhoods that are dangerous. And I think it's important that we don't penalize our students for trying to get to school safely with something that is allowed. And if we have our own rules in place that they have to keep it in their backpack, they cannot take it out, I think that we can expect them to handle it responsibly when they're at school. And if they don't, then our consequences surely can kick in. But I do not want to be responsible for removing the one thing that could protect a child to and from school.
Thank you, Member Castrodell. So I have a procedural question. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if I could have a moment to respond to all the discussion.
If you could have a what?
A moment to respond to all the discussion.
Sure.
That's been going on. Thank you. So earlier today, I was actually having a conversation with Mr. Palmerini, and I'm a parent of 2 OCPS elementary age students. And
is this public comment?
Oh, could it be public comment? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But from my perspective, from a parent perspective, I am genuinely concerned with us allowing other students to bring pepper spray on campus. I don't know the reaction my children would have to it, but if another student brings it, it's in their backpack, maybe they don't have malicious intent, but it leaks. I was speaking with Chief Holmes earlier, that can cause just as much reaction as somebody spraying it. And so I wouldn't want to be the parent of a child that ends up in the hospital because of another student bringing pepper spray. My thoughts are this. So pepper spray, Member Gallo is correct, is not a weapon if it's under 2 ounces. That's in 790.001. However, as a board, you have established other dangerous objects or other contraband that you've forbidden from being on our campuses, such as gun replicas, airsoft guns, BB guns, ice picks, things like that. Those are also not weapons under the statute, and those technically could be allowed, but we have prohibited it. So I think you are well within your right to prohibit it. From a parent perspective, again, of elementary students, if you allow it for these older children that we're discussing, you're also allowing it for kindergarten students. And I would love to say that parents won't allow their kindergarten students to bring it, but I can't guarantee that. And when you have younger children that don't understand the ramifications of spraying the pepper spray, they may end up spraying it and harming themselves, their classroom, their teacher, anybody, because they're just curious. I actually found a study from, it was from the Poison Center. And they literally cite in their study, poison control receives many calls about unintentional exposures to pepper spray. Curious children have sprayed themselves or others. Teenagers have misused these products, often in school. They literally write often in school in their report. So I think there is a major concern from the other side that this could potentially be used and could potentially hurt somebody. We also pulled several news stories where children sprayed it on the bus or unintentionally sprayed it, and they had to clear a classroom. Carla Owens, that was here earlier, and I asked for her permission to share her story. When she was teaching in high school many years ago, a student in her classroom, she doesn't know if it was intentionally or unintentionally, set off pepper spray, and they had to clear the entire classroom, and they lost out an entire period of instructional time. So my concern is if it comes on campus and unintentionally goes off, I mean, you were going to have to face that. My suggestion would be, one other concern I have, sorry, I was kind of taking notes as we were going, is that this may be a slippery slope. So we have parents right now that want to bring pepper spray, but then what happens when we have parents that want their child to bring a common pocket knife or a gun replica to school or a toy gun or something like that, to where they're also deterring somebody from harming them. So I'm concerned about the slippery slope that may cause. But my thought is that there has to be a better way than just pepper spray. I don't know what the better way is, but we talk about the main reason we want this is to protect our students when they're coming to and from school. In conversations with Chief Holmes earlier, if somebody is walking and they do get attacked, it is highly unlikely that they're going to be able to go into their backpack and get out the pepper spray to even use it. So I don't know what the better way is, but I feel like we have very smart people in this room and that work for this district that can figure out a better way to make it safe for our students to come to and from school, and I just don't think pepper spray is the answer. So that is my 2 cents as a parent of 2 OCPS elementary students, and thank you very much for letting me share that.
Thank you. We have some very, very good points. An example of clearing a classroom and missing out on the entire lesson plan doesn't resonate with me when I'm juxtaposing that with the safety of a child getting to and from school. I definitely appreciate where you're coming from as the rights of a parent to send my child to school and not have to worry about that possibility. What I have thought about is the backpack and thinking if I'm at school and something happens and I really need it, and because I was thinking, what if there's a fight at school and a kid is thinking, well, I'll use the pepper spray. Getting the pepper spray out of the backpack is not an instantaneous thing. We carry pepper spray on our bikes, and we go down a trail that's, I'm certain there are alligators, and I've talked to my husband about what are we going to do if we see an alligator, because I really don't like going down that trail, and he said he'll use the pepper spray, and I'm trying to picture him getting the pepper spray off the bike and spraying the alligator. So I recognize that getting out of the backpack is not going to be the way to save your life walking home from school. But I do think if kids are using it, if that's the reason that mom and dad have sent them to school, it's not in their backpack on the way to school. So when I walk my dog, it's right there in my hand, because if I need it, because a dog is attacking me or my dogs, I need it now. I don't need to look for it. So I do think that the argument that the kids wouldn't be able to use it in self-defense to and from school, honestly, if they're using it in self-defense, it's just not going to be in their backpack. It's going to be clipped to their belt. It's going to be in their pocket. It's going to be someplace that they can quickly get to it, or it's pointless. But I'm still thinking, and I'm still processing your perspective. So let me. Superintendent is next, and then I'll go to member. Oh, I know, I did have a procedural question, though. Mr. Palmerini ran. But Dr. Vasquez, you'll know this. So the possibility of having 2 paths moving at the same time, I don't want to miss the beginning of the school year, and I really don't like the idea of moving this forward and then coming back and doing something, because we've issued the student code of conduct and we've issued what our rules and consequences are, and to have to send something out to everybody, again, it comes down to like flagging. oh, and here's an addendum, your kid can bring pepper spray to school? I mean, we're not saying that, but that's how that will come across. Yes, I know, but I would still much prefer that we make this decision and it's incorporated before. So my question was, I know you said it would be tight, and I don't know how tight is tight and whether that could be done. And then the other question was, could this train that we're on right now continue to run while we advertise a potentially different, slightly different version and move forward with both of them simultaneously? Did you follow that, Mr. Palmerini?
Yeah, I did, and
Okay.
the answer is yes, it can. So you can take this through, adopt it, and then you can start the advertisement process simultaneously and do that too.
So, I mean, like literally, could tomorrow you start advertising a different version?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, you can do-
But
yeah,
this one would stay on the calendar,
right. you
and
would
that
go-
one would start on the calendar.
Right.
Okay.
Remember, we have to advertise no later or no earlier than 28 days prior to final adoption and all of that. So we'd have to work out the timeline. So
Okay.
you would have final approval
Okay.
most likely after this one.
Okay.
But yeah, you can do simultaneously.
And one thing I think I know the answer to, and I'm not going to like it, but I might as well ask it in case I'm wrong, and I will like it. At the county, there were times when we would advertise an either or, that we might do this or we might do that, and that way it gave us a flexibility. Do we have the ability to do something along those lines?
I think you do have the ability to do something along those lines, yeah.
All right. Well, moving forward, research it and confirm it, but I think moving forward, there's a lot of times when I think that would be valuable for us in terms of expediting this process and not having to start the process over. So, Dr. Vasquez, did you want to be recognized? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First a comment and then a question. So I do have concerns with principal discretion because that means they could make it a level 4. But if that's the will of the board, then that's the way that we can go. And then my question is, currently, we are on a path to approve a code of conduct that has pepper sprays found on a student in their backpack during a search, they would receive level 2 consequence. And I want to clarify, because I think this is where the reason to re-advertise, or one of the reasons to re-advertise may come. And it's progressive, that if a child then, it's found on them the second time, it would be a level 3, and then if it's found on them the fourth time, the third time, it would be a level 4. However, that could also be coded as insubordination. If a child's been told you're not supposed to have this and they continue to bring it, interpretation could be, which could then repeated misconduct, which could also lead to a level 4. Right. So the question that I have is, what are we looking to re-advertise?
Let me make sure I understood the second half of that. So even if we took away the progressive part, I think your point is that if 3 times they violated it knowing it was a level 2 and it was a violation, then it's insubordination, which could rise all the way to a level 4.
Or repeated misconduct.
Okay. Thank you for that observation. Thank you.
So a recommendation could be that a modification to my earlier recommendation is that we move forward with the current code as advertised, with it as a level 2. We work on communication with our schools regarding the intent of the board to not penalize a child who has pepper spray on them as part of a search. And we monitor that data, specifically looking for repeated misconduct, which in all likelihood, if we're doing random searches, which is how this would be found, highly unlikely that a child would be searched twice and found with the pepper spray, although not entirely unlikely. And then review that data at the 9 weeks, and then review the data again at the semester and bring it to the board. Since we've centralized discipline, we're able to look at the repeated misconduct, and so we can isolate those schools where we're seeing that and have conversations about it. Because at the end of the day, what I hear you trying to avoid can be circumvented if a principal sees this as not a safety measure, but as someone being insubordinate or someone not following the code of conduct. And so I believe that by educating and communicating and monitoring that from the district level, we may be able to come to a point where the board feels comfortable without impacting the code. But I just my understanding is if you have a child that continues to bring this to school, there are other ways that they could be level 4 or receive even a consequence for that.
Okay. I do want to opine on where I was coming from on the principal. I had, when I heard about whichever county it was, I could see the value in the principal having more information, but I'm pretty uncomfortable with it for several reasons. One, I think we're putting a heck of a lot of responsibility on a principal. Not that principals aren't capable of it, but I mean, we're asking them to potentially be making life or death decisions. How am I dealing with this kid versus that kid? And how's the school across the street dealing with it? And am I foreseeing what happens? And if something horrible happens, I made the wrong, I don't know. I just don't. So that's one concern I have. And then the other one, even though I agree with the idea, I kind of appreciate your common sense thing, but I don't think a child's safety should be dependent upon which school they end up in, and how that teachers or principals' belief system is or opinion is on this issue. So I just don't think that should be different from one school to the next. So I don't know where that lands me when I think, Dr. Vasquez, of what you just said, because I think what you're saying is we leave everything the way it is, but we communicate to our principals that the board is concerned about the safety of our kids and doesn't want to overreact to finding pepper spray if the belief is that it was with the child for safety reasons. And so recommending no consequence and monitoring that.
Correct, monitoring.
Okay.
There's a very small number from the data that we received for the entire year. And so, and even smaller when you break it down, those that were found in a search. I think that also allows us an opportunity to do more research and see if there is, I mean, we're not the only district that has the issue with children getting to school or walking. And sometimes it's not even that it's dark. And so that added sense of security, we can see if there are other safety measures that other districts have discovered that may help us with this problem of them having it and not having it on them. So that's my recommendation. I have serious concerns with it being the principal discretion. You make a great point, Chair, that really that sense of if I go this way and you second guess, right? What if something happens? What if it does get taken or it does leak? Versus another principal that says, you know, the likelihood of that happening is really small, so I'm not I'm going to gamble, or I'm going to err on the side of caution and safety of the child. I think it has the potential for us to have a bigger problem than if we didn't have it at all, which I'm not advocating for, but I certainly would not. I would want us not to have it at all, as opposed to giving it as a consequence, giving the discretion, because I don't think they want to be in that position either.
All right, last thought on this, because one of the hesitations I have is telling principals a message that is different than what's in our code. But then I think back on the cell phone policy and the communication that you had to the principals, that we're going in the beginning to do a lot of grace and a lot of reminding before we start confiscating phones, as opposed to just hardline stick to the books. So I could see where this approach could work, to monitor it if the message is out to the principals, so that this board has the opportunity to have more information, a little more research, but comfort level that for right now, if a child's bringing it for safety, there's not going to be a consequence. So that's my input on that. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a question on this. So even in the chart that we were getting, when we look at, it's over 2 years, so that 103 is actually over 2 school years, not just one. What's the difference between possession and found in a random screening or search? Like, how would we know that they possessed it? What's the difference between possession and found in a random screening or search?
Found in possession could be they got searched at school and it wasn't related to a random screening. They could have been searched for something else, and they were found in possession of the pepper spray. The pepper spray could be attached to their book bag. The pepper spray could have been in their purse. Somebody went in their purse and took the pepper spray out. But when we talk about in a random screening, it's when the our district police go through and do random screenings.
Okay. Because we have, like, when you look at this chart and you look at just the consequence that was given to students, there's like 4 of them that it was only a level possess of contraband. So it was a 3J. It was a level 3 level. And that's for possession or found in random searches. And one was sprayed and dispensed, and they still only got possession of contraband. And then you have 2, 3 that were serious misconduct, and that was with possession only. And then 1 was sprayed. And then the rest of them go into, there's only 1 that has drug use possession. I don't know how pepper spray would be drug use. Like, I don't know how that was categorized. There's 3 There's 3 that was categorized as drug use possession, which makes no sense. And then the rest of them was weapons, was a 4H and 4K. And we had 19 plus 22. So there was 45 students in 2 school years that were level 4, just being in possession of it. And then you add on another 29 to that who was found in a random search that were, well, it's less than that, but the majority of them will level forward for it was just possession. They never took out their backpack. They didn't misuse it. They were doing nothing but trying to be safe on their way to school. And I get your point, Sarah. I'm a mom, and so my kids are out of school, but I'm sure that parents, I was worried about them every day. You worry about your child every day that they're not in your sight and they're not with you. You worry about where they are and what's happening. My children are 26 and 24, and I could tell you all kinds of funny stories. But we're just in a different age, and we have buses that are late consistently, and kids are left in the dark, and people who are passing by see and know that this bus is always late. and they're in the dark, and they're standing there in the dark, and they have nothing to defend themselves with. No, I mean, nothing. I get the pepper spray being in the backpack. If I was a parent and I gave my child pepper spray, I would be like, you keep that pepper spray in your hand until you see the bus, and then you put that pepper spray away. And the same, if you're walking to school, you have that pepper spray in your hand, and you put it away before you get on the campus. That's what I would be telling my daughters. Because you're right, buried in a backpack, it means nothing. But if you have it on you, you can then use it, or it could just be enough to scare somebody that you have it in your hand, to keep away from you. So, I don't know, every child has a right to feel safe, and that child on the way to school or waiting at the bus stop to a bus that's consistently 20 minutes late deserves to feel some type of safety as much as the one that's in the classroom sitting next to somebody that might have it in their backpack. And I just think that if they have done nothing wrong with it or illegal, there was no malicious intent, just for it to get caught and then they're automatically suspended, that's automatically going on their record, especially in high school where those records matter to colleges, to military, to other things. I just think there's a big impact on that. So I'm still comfortable with the level 2, and then maybe revisit the escalation later. I don't even want to have that conversation right now because this one's taken a long time. But I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with it. And if the data proves otherwise, then I'm absolutely fine admitting that I was wrong and reviewing it at that time.
Okay. Member Kester-Denel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure how we move forward on this because we still have different opinions. And the board's not all here. I think we should have the chance for the others to weigh in as well. But the way I see the pepper spray as possession is similar to the way that the state recently changed, headache medicine. Students are allowed to possess it. And our phone policy, students are allowed to possess it, but they have to be put away. And I think the pepper spray needs to be put away, out of sight. And then if it is misused, there are consequences. And I don't think it is on the level of these other weapons. I don't think it's on the same level as a gun or a knife. I think it's an appropriate tool for a young teenager or elementary kid even to have if they need it on the way to school. And like I said, I don't know where we are as a board. I don't know what you would advertise. I don't know what changes, because I still think that there shouldn't be a consequence just for having possession and having it out of sight, even when it's found during a random search. If you find it, you say, put it back in your bag. We didn't even know you had it. If you misuse it, there's a consequence. So I don't know what we do to advertise if we're still discussing it.
I've got an idea. One, I think we need to move this forward. And I think we should move it forward the way it is, because we don't have the benefit of public comment on which to have confidence about moving it forward with a change. So I would suggest we move this forward. And then I would suggest that we take a vote amongst us as to what change we are going to seek. And the changes that I'm hearing are, it's a level 2 and it stays at a level 2. And again, this is only if it does not come out of the backpack and is never seen, or it's 0 consequence. And then the other option is it's up to the principal. I think, for me, up to the principal is out. Does anybody feel married to up to the principal? Okay, so up to the principal, we're not going to vote on. So Now we need to decide whether this portion of it, because my next step is we bring that version back, and then we work very hard to make sure we have a full board, which is almost always the case. And the full board will then have the benefit of this version that's moving through. They get to hear from the superintendent and her thoughts on the way that we can provide more assurance to the board about the safety issues while we gain more information. So the rest of the board has that opportunity to keep this train moving forward and to the finish line. And they'll also have the opportunity to look at whatever we vote on right now. Okay? So we lost quorum. So we have to wait a minute. How about we move, go ahead, Superintendent.
So, Madam Chair, not to contradict, but I'm doing the simple math, and
Yes.
the majority sitting here, I mean, everyone sitting here doesn't want a consequence if the child is bringing it to school for the sake of safety. And so even if the other 3 members of the board disagree, the majority doesn't want a consequence, is what I'm hearing. So if the majority doesn't want a consequence, then I think what we do is we move forward with the dual approach.
Wait, I'm not sure that you're right on that, though. I want a consequence. I'm not sure that decision's been made. That's why I wanted to take a vote on that first, because if you're right and the majority of us don't want a consequence, then that's what would get advertised. But I want a consequence.
No, I think misuse, we're on the same page for misuse. I haven't heard anyone, unless Board Member Castro-Dental has changed. My understanding is that where there is a difference in opinion, like in recommendation, is if the child it's found on them, whether it's a search, a random search, or they're caught up in another discipline situation and it's found on them, and they say that it's for safety purposes, that the board does not want them to have a consequence because they're safe. You want them to be safe. And the reason I'm saying that is because if you don't want progression, and it's always going to be a level 2, it's really pointless to continue to go to the child, okay, you're going to have, pass, or we're going to contact your parent. So there's no incentive for that child to change the behavior, and based on your comments, you don't feel there needs to be a change in the behavior. So I go back to, if the majority do not want a consequence, I don't see, and staff, I know we disagree. I mean, I'm not agreeing, I'm just summarizing what the will of the board is, because my recommendation stands that it needs to be a consequence and that it should be progressive. But if the majority of the board is of that same opinion, the time, we have a lot of projects that we're working on, and so I don't see a point in doing any more research on it other than advertising, rule development with no consequence, and then waiting on public comment for that, and then scheduling the date for the work for the board meeting where it is approved. And we start the school year, I think it's 2 weeks, that we would have something with a consequence, and then after that, if approved, it goes in with no consequence. Okay, I apologize.
One board member does believe there should be a consequence for them having pepper spray. I'm sorry. That's how I feel. Yes, because I've been there. I'm sorry. I've been there. I've experienced it. Consequence, you shouldn't have it. But I also understand why they may have it, because of the safety measures and all of that. But somebody is not going to do it right. They're not going to do it right. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. I still, okay. I understand.
Board member, but I've been there.
Superintendent, you made a lot of sense. Even though I wanted a consequence, you make a lot of sense, and it's kind of pointless to have a consequence if we're really okay. And I won't repeat everything you just said, but it makes a lot of sense, a lot of clarity. Thank you very much. And I mean that sincerely. But I still want to keep this train moving. And I want to keep this train moving because I think that you also offer an alternative that I think is valuable. And I want the rest of the board that's not here to have an opportunity. And even though we are the majority, and if all of us did agree to no consequence, and that's what we want to see, I still think this issue is serious enough that contemplating what you said, which I'm really leaning towards anyway, that the rest of the board should have that opportunity, and we should have that opportunity to come back one more time and spend another couple of hours in thoughtful deliberation. But no, but honestly, I'm not embarrassed that we're spending a lot of time on this. It's extremely important, and it's to Sarah's standpoint. I mean, there are more than one side to this issue. So with that, I'm going to recommend that somebody make a motion to bring forward the same document with no consequence for less than, is it 2 ounces? And the consequences would stay the same for more than 2 ounces. Okay, so we would still have the progressive, if it's more than 2 ounces, that we make a motion that you all start that process as quickly as you can. You keep this process moving forward, and when we get back, this will be probably the next hearing that we'll have before we have that one, and then the board will be able, the full board will be able to provide more direction.
Hold on.
Go ahead, Superintendent Trumsell.
Yes.
2 things. If it's over 2 ounces, it's a level 4. So
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
I just want to make sure.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
And if I'm not mistaken, what we need is consensus on how to move forward. Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Oh, you're right, not a vote, but consensus. Go ahead, Mr. Palmerini.
What the superintendent said.
Yeah, but so so help me out. Can we have consensus on 2 things?
Yeah.
So we can have consensus on everything I just said.
Yes.
Okay. That we're going to take 2 paths simultaneously. All right. Member, Vice Chair.
So just a thought, what if, and if PASS isn't effective, then why are we using PASS? I was just going to throw that question out there. If PASS isn't effective as a deterrent for bad behavior, then why are we making all these kids go to PASS for dress code?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair.
You're recognized.
So if a child does, remember, PASS is first offense. So if it's not a deterrent, for many of the kids it is, but for some it's not. But if they violate it, there's a greater consequence. You're not proposing that. You're proposing the same thing. And I understand where you're coming from. I don't agree with it, but I understand it because you're saying this is a safety issue. I also have concerns that, people may be listening thinking Orlando is, crime-ridden, and it's not. It's not. We're concerned that some of our children are walking in the dark or in the afternoon by themselves. And there are, individuals out there that we know are not well. So I don't want people to think we're crime-ridden Orlando. But there is no deterrent. And you're stating we believe that the child should be able to do this because it's a safety precaution. And we don't want to, in any way, shape, or form, not provide that to our kids. An argument can be made that now you may be creating an unsafe environment at school because you're allowing pepper spray there. So I can make an argument the other way, but there's no consequence. If there's no consequence, it's the same consequence and it's passed, it's not, and that's where I worry that a principal or an assistant principal or a dean and a child, it's the third time it's found to be with the pepper spray, they're going to move beyond that and there will be a more significant consequence. And so if the will of the board or the majority of the board feels that way, I don't want to put a principal in that position, and I certainly don't want to have a child in a school with a different consequence that might occur at a different school, which is why we use the code and try to make it consistent across the board.
All right. Thank you.
Dr. Thank you, Dr. Vasquez. Thank you, Chair. So I just want to make sure I understand, well, two things first. The first thing is, can we clean up how we categorize this? Because if what passes is a level 2 and then it goes up, from there, it should be tagged in the same manner on the referral. And we just saw evidence of that. It's the interpretation from the administration of the schools interprets what pepper spray is, and I would imagine a lot of other things in our code of conduct vastly different. So if we're really striving for consistency, I know, but I mean, if you just look at what was sent us, I mean, the way they labeled it, at what offense they labeled it at, very differently amongst.
But it could be multiple offenses. I mean, it could be that they were caught with a vape pen and they also then found that they had a spray, and so that's what it is.
So it could have been more than one item.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So what we're moving forward would be this as is with the progression, and then the other one would be no consequence at all. Those are our two choices to consider. No consequence for possession. There's still a consequence for use. Or if they take it out of the backpack, or if they use it, there's a severe consequence. If it's just possessing it.
We're all on the same page. We're only talking about having it concealed. Okay? Member Gould.
I just wanted to say I was in support of what you said, Chair.
Okay.
With the two paths.
Okay, you're in support. Member Castrodental, you're in support. Two paths, but one path is no consequence. Huh? Okay. And Member Felder?
Two paths for me.
Yeah. Okay, we have consensus. Let me say this about that. With the, I would amend that consensus, but you can't amend a consensus. If, with the version that will start the process anew with no consequence, we also need to remove it as contraband if it's less than 2 ounces. I believe we should be removing that so we don't have a discrepancy between saying this is not a banned substance and it is a banned substance. Dr. Vasquez, would you agree, or should we still keep it in as contraband? I know you don't agree with any of this. I don't mean
Correct.
to.
So, no.
And I respect that. I obviously I do.
Yeah, I'm not in agreement either, but I work at the will of the board. And so if the will of the board is to remove it, we will. You direct us. We've given you our recommendation.
Right.
And now we're taking action based on what you would like for us to do.
Here is my question. If we are going to allow or not prohibit the carrying of less than 2 ounces concealed, then is there any reason why we would continue to call that contraband? Because there may be some reason that doesn't jump out to me that we would still want to define it as contraband.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm
Dr.
just trying to
Joyner.
understand, because you said 2 words. When you say concealed, that means it's going to be inside their backpack and no one can see it.
Yes.
And if it's not concealed, would it be considered contraband?
very good point. Oh, very good point. See, and that's one of the reasons I was looking to Dr. Vasquez is I admit I do not know all the ramifications of something being called and defined contraband. I know that it's come up a couple of times when we were talking about doing this, and you've said, well, it's still contraband. So I know that you understand through all of our code what that implies. Now, what you just raised is an entirely different observation than the question I was asking, which is, can an object be contraband based on its volume? Do you understand quantum physics and the fact that you can have two atoms and anyway, depending upon which way you open the box. I read too much on quantum physics, but you sound like quantum physics right now. Go ahead.
So another question, and I
was still looking for an answer.
No, I'm gonna. It goes to that.
Question.
It goes to what just came up, which is why I believe this is not the direction the board should take. But so, what if it's found on a car rider? You're saying you're willing to take the risk of having pepper spray at a school, knowing the consequences that can occur if it leaks or somebody gets a hold of it. But what if and you're willing to do that because you have children that are walking to school, it's unsafe. So it's a car rider, or maybe even a bike rider, right? So a bike rider too. But so what if it's a car rider that it's found?
Where,
So then you're
okay.
you're-
Member Gould is next to be recognized. And that's why we need the whole board more time.
Subject now.
All right.
Okay. So I want to clarify how I view this so that we might, if everybody is in agreement or not in agreement, then we'll be back in the same place. While on campus, under 2 ounces, whatever the rule, state-defined rule is for pepper spray, not to be contraband. If it is not seen pulled out by that child at school, they would not have a consequence. If I have a car rider and I'm dropping my car rider off to swim practice, or oars, because we don't have oars, or ballet, because they're going to be a professional ballerina, and they have to walk from X to Y, I still want them to be able to have that safety component within them and using it when they are alone out in the world. So I am defining it that if it's under that 2 ounces and I do not take that out of my bag, I've never shown it to anyone. I didn't show it to Sally, who then took it out of my bag, because that would be a level 4. That's where I cut it off. If it's more than 2 ounces, it goes through the regular progression. If it comes out, it goes through the regular progression. If they use it, they're out of there.
I agree with that. Member Gallo, you're next.
I agree with Pam.
Okay. We have consensus.
Listen, let me tell you.
Well, consensus,
Oh, you got 3 people.
everybody. I'm sorry. Okay. No, it's up to you. I was thinking.
Okay, so listen. It is contraband. And I do understand what Member Gould has said, because that can happen, and it probably happens more often than we know, that the children they're unsafe and they need it. But my concern again, somebody is there's, but it's I call it Murphy's Law, whatever. this is going to come back to bite us if we don't really deal with it from the perspective of its danger. Because someone is not going to follow the rules, and they're going to sue us on the rules that we made, that we created. So yeah, you come back. It's contraband because it's pepper spray. It's a weapon. However, I think nobody wants to hear it, but we might have to do it case by case because that is contraband. It is a weapon. I use it to protect myself from miscreants who try to bother me. It's my weapon. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. It's not, Vice Chair stepped out. It's not legally defined as contraband in the statute.
So,
Under 2
under
ounces,
2
not.
ounces, which is what we've said, under 2 ounces is not
Okay,
contraband.
member Gould.
Yeah, under 2 ounces is not contraband. We defined it that way, so that's what we're talking about, is changing. So under 2 ounces only, not all pepper spray in, 90-gallon containers. Under 2 ounces, never comes out. And if somebody's going to come to school, just like they're going to come to school with a gun and they know that's pretty against the rules, if they are planning to do something aggressive with anything, a kitchen knife, a butter knife, they're going to do it no matter what we write in the rules. And there's consequences. If they're coming with pepper spray to school to spray all the kids in the courtyard at noon, they are going to get a level 4, and they're going to be out of there. And they might even be arrested.
All right. We now have consensus.
Why don't we just do that for contraband?
Okay.
If it's concealed, we don't get any.
Y'all want to keep going?
We just make its own.
Is that it?
Bear spray.
Are we finished? We're not finished, are we?
Do we have bear spray?
We're not talking about bear spray.
Oh, let's talk about bear.
We are not talking about bear spray.
What about hairspray?
With a lighter, so good.
Ms.
Yeah,
Kapinski.
that is the only change we had brought today. Thank you, Board, for your insights.
I thought we were going to be out of here quick.
Yes, we're
Okay.
done.
We're done.
Anything else? Dr. Vasquez? All right.
What about the cell phone data? We're not discussing that?
Oh, you want to discuss it? Sure.
We were given it, so I didn't know if we were discussing it. No?
No? Okay. All right. All right. Meeting adjourned.
We're done.